Good afternoon. Welcome to Studio One on this Thursday, the 26th of February. The last we'll see you this month as we move into March. That will also mark the end of Black History Month, celebrating the contributions and accomplishments of American blacks. I'm Tom Beering, and joining us today on Studio One, we're honored to have the first woman appointed to the North Dakota Supreme Court bench, Justice Beryl Levine. Also a conversation with Doug Fosse, director and organizer of Dakotaland, Red River High's dramatic presentation receiving quite a bit of recent attention. And our Open Door segment looks at the ballerina with the Royal Winnipeg Ballet's communication director, Lyndre Kearns. But first to the news desk with Lynn Shocker and Courtney Bateman. Lynn?
Thanks, Tom. The Tower Commission has put some of the blame for the Iran-Contra affair on President Reagan, but lays it most heavily on Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North and Reagan's advisors. The report to the three-member commission appointed by Reagan was released this morning. It says the president was preoccupied by his compassion for the American hostages in Lebanon and his zeal to get them out. In trying to do that, the report says, Reagan went ahead with the plan to sell arms to Iran with a concept that was not accurately reflected in the reality of the operation. Chief of Staff Donald Regan was also heavily criticized, and former National Security Advisor John Poindexter was cited for ignoring the legal and political risks of the venture. The commission spent the better part of the 3 months investigation the administration's plot to sell arms to Iran and North's efforts to divert the profits from those sales to Contra troops in Nicaragua.
Will there be equality for women in the future? One UND journalism professor says not until today's college women are in the nursing home. Zena Beth McGlashan, who also teaches some women's history classes, says many college women think all the avenues are open to them, but find out differently after they graduate. Women's History Week is wrapping up on campus, but next week a campus-wide task force studying the status of women at the university will hold public hearings on issues from pay equity to housing and childcare.
The Soviet Union has exploded a nuclear bomb, its first in a year and a half. It was a relatively small bomb, the Soviets say, detonated to test the physics of a nuclear explosion.
Grand Forks City officials say they're ready for the weather to cool off. With the rain and melting snow we've had today, the streets are likely to turn to sheets of ice as the temperature drops. But Street Superintendent Gary Fish says the city's 3 sanders are standing by and will hit the busy streets and bus routes at the first sign of freezing. After those first priorities are taken care of, Fish says the crews will sand all the stop signs and then take care of less traveled streets. So if you have to drive tonight, take a little extra time and be careful. And actor James Coco died last night of a heart attack. He had appeared on Broadway, TV, and in the movies, most recently in The Muppets Take Manhattan. Tom?
Okay, did you see that movie?
Nah, I missed it.
No. Thanks, Courtney. Lynn? We're going to take a break after this, but don't go away. When we come back, weather plus a lot more right here on Studio One.
Studio One is sponsored by JCPenney, located in Columbia Mall. Smarter than ever, JCPenney.
Maybe someone you know or even love uses cocaine and you still haven't told them how badly you feel about it. Well, there's no more time to look the other way. Cocaine and crack are addictive and they kill. Please, don't be a part of the silent lie that says cocaine's okay. Speak from your heart and help save a life.
Cocaine, the big lie. Call 1-800-662-HELP.
Since some of you will be graduating this year,
my fantasy?
Get tan and get drunk.
Do your thing.
Dress well and drink a lot. That's what college is all about.
We're not going to put up with it any longer, right?
Yeah.
Stress.
You cannot fall behind.
You're doomed to stress.
Some people really like the money. There is no money in poetry.
She thinks the colleges are in a mess.
Drugs, sex, rock and roll. Interface, relevance, dialectic.
Budget reduction.
Wait till they find out how much ignorance costs. Go with law or medicine.
Campus America, the only news magazine for the college student. Watch it on NCTV.
It's 4 minutes past the hour. Still up ahead on Studio One, North Dakota's first woman Supreme Court Justice, Beryl Levine. Also Communication Director Lyndre Kearns of the Royal Winnipeg Ballet and Dakotaland's Doug Fosse. And of course, meteorologist Pam Coonan, who will bring us up to date with our weather. Pam?
Thanks, Tom. At 4 o'clock in Grand Forks today, light snow was occurring and we had a temperature of 24 degrees. Our relative humidity was 88% and the winds were northwesterly at 5 miles per hour. Yesterday's national extremes occurred in Fort Myers and Key West, Florida, where the temperature reached a high of 81 degrees, and the nation's low of 17 degrees below zero occurred in Yellowstone, Wyoming. Today, the southeastern portion of the nation has been receiving quite a bit of rain due to an upper-level shortwave which was over that region. Some of the heaviest rainfall occurred in Beaumont, Texas, which received a little more than 4 inches. An area of weak low pressure in association with an upper level wave was over eastern North Dakota. A frontal system extended from the low to another area of low pressure in north central New Mexico. This system has caused snowfall in Montana, Wyoming, and North Dakota. Overnight, Bismarck, North Dakota received 4 inches of snow. A weather system in Southern California has been producing small disturbances which have been moving through our region during the past week, causing rain and snowfall. Travelers' advisories are posted into this evening for eastern North Dakota. The high temperature today in Grand Forks was 34 degrees, which occurred this morning. Since then, the temperature has been dropping due to a cold front which passed over the Grand Forks area at 12:40 this afternoon. I'll be back later in the program with the forecast. Tom?
Did you hear they had snow in L.A., on the beaches in L.A.?
I sure did, about an inch of snow.
Suddenly you don't feel so bad living back here?
No, not at all.
Thanks, Pam. North Dakota State High School hockey tournament is underway today. Red River High goes in with a 19-1 record as the favorite. What about their accomplishments off the ice? Consider the success of Red River High's production of Dakotaland. After a full house command performance this last Tuesday night, the dramatic tribute to North Dakota farming may soon be on the road to Washington. Meet the mastermind of Dakotaland next on Studio One.
Hello, and welcome to our special guest, handsomely dressed in a raincoat, a fellow who truly leads a dog's life. Meet McGruff, the crime dog.
Thanks, Dick. It may be a dog's life, but I'm helping people take a bite out of crime.
Indeed you are. Now, do I understand that neighborhood watch programs have reduced crime in some areas as much as 50%?
That's right, but there's more to be done.
Well, tell me about it, which I'm sure he will.
You bet. Make sure your neighborhood has plenty of lights. Leave one on in your house at night, and remember, light a light to stop a thief.
Shady characters prefer the dark, eh?
You got it. Also, start a volunteer escort service for older folks.
Aha, good news for the old folks at home, eh? What about the young folks?
Start McGruff houses.
Which are?
Houses kids can duck into in case of trouble.
Terrific. Anything else?
Yeah, that's a nice jacket, Dick.
Oh, thanks, McGruff. Hey, and thanks for all you're doing. For more information, write to this address and help
take a bite out of crime.
Welcome back to Studio One. Doug Fosse is a director and to a great extent organizer of Dakotaland, Red River High's prized dramatic production, which just finished a command performance this last Tuesday night. What originated as a pre-centennial production is now being considered by legislatures to be presented as far as Washington. That's quite an accomplishment.
Well, I don't know how seriously that last comment needs to be taken. There's, I guess what's happened is that a lot of people have looked at it and believe that it's something that's good for North Dakota, and they would like to see it continued. And I'm not sure how far it will be continued. I suspect that there's some limitations. Number one is we have a cast that kind of needs to get on with their lives, and the second limitation, of course, is money. But we do have a videotape of it, and we hope to put the script together so that it will be available. And who knows what will happen. If somebody comes up with an offer we can't refuse, why, obviously we would like to do it some more.
And we do have a videotape, and we want to put that on now if we can. We have a videotape of the performance from Tuesday night's performance. And as we look at this, we want you eventually here, Doug, to explain what's going on. Doug, can you give us an idea now? What are we seeing?
This is a scene from the second act of Dakotaland. It is a scene that we started with some original music composed by Mike Koppelman, and we sent the kids out in the hall to say, what would you do with this music that is fall? And they came back with a thrashing machine, and that it starts out with a binder that cuts the wheat, and then moves into shocking, then moves into a machine in which a bundle is fed in, and into a cylinder, and then across shakers and sieves into a straw stack. It's just a representation then of a whole thrashing harvest scene.
But Doug, these are city kids. How could they possibly understand the elements of country living?
Well, we did a lot of research. They're not just city kids. A lot of them have been on farms. One cast member did live on a farm at one time. I grew up on a farm. I actually drove a tractor on a bundle rack when I was a kid, participated in thrashing. A lot of them have seen thrashing demonstrations, and most of them have got relatives that came from the farm, which was the whole point of the show, that our roots come from the farm and from the rural background. We also use Charles and Sue Ellen Bateman to a heavy extent, farmers south of town and good friends of mine for many years. Charlie came in and talked to the cast, and that was our beginning. A lot of what he said ended up being in the script in one form or another.
Now here we're seeing farming taking a real negative turn. The National Geographic had just done this month's edition on North Dakota hard times in the prairie. And here we're seeing like a breath of fresh air, so to say, concerning the roots of North Dakota. Is that how people are taking this, huh?
Well, how else can you take it? You know, I guess that the question that we asked ourselves as we started, obviously farms are in trouble, and agricultural, or the economics of agriculture is a bad deal right now. But agriculture will always be there because the land will always be there. And I guess the point that we came up with, we didn't want to talk about, let's feel sorry for farmers because they're losing the land. There's nothing we can do about that, and we don't really understand that totally. What we do understand is that the land will still be there after the farmers are gone. You can't change that, and maybe that's the only message of hope that you really can find in the whole dilemma. And the other thing is that you can never take away the roots. That's part of the people, and that I guess what our kids discovered was that a lot of what they are is a result of their agricultural roots from grandpas, grandmas, parents sometimes.
That's something these kids are going to keep with them a long time, isn't that right?
You'll never get rid of that. Who you are is where you've been, and that's, I guess, important.
Doug Fosse, thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
we
thank
appreciate
you.
your time. Doug Fosse, director of Dakotaland. If you haven't had the opportunity to see the production, you can catch it right here on Cable Channel 3. That'll be advertised eventually somewhere down along the line, but you'll see it. Studio One continues after this.
When you graduate from college, what will you be able to offer an employer?
I like working with people.
I really like working with people.
I really like people.
I'm a people person.
I'm eager.
I'm eager. Eager. I think I'm eager.
And I was president of...
Offer an employer something meaningful, practical work experience. A nationwide college program called Co-op Education can give you that competitive edge.
And I'd even relocate.
Right, Co-op Education. It's the experience you need for the job you want.
All this week on Audiophilia, it's Genesis with the Mama Tour. Turn it up and tune in to Audiophilia all this week.
It's 14 minutes past the hour. Our Open Door segment features a group who have achieved international acclaim in dance, performing in 453 cities in 31 countries. Now listen to this. They have a schedule filled to the year 2000. The Royal Winnipeg Ballet will grace the stage at the Chester Fritz tomorrow night. As the company's communication director, Lyndre Kearns, tells us, you don't have to look hard to appreciate the value of this art.
You know, ballet is an art form that a lot of people are definitely, if they haven't been, uncomfortable about. And I don't know where it got this great reputation that you need a PhD in aesthetics to understand it, because it's really just a lot simpler than that. Ballet offers a lot. I mean, for one thing, a great selection of music. And when it's the Royal Winnipeg, it's live music because we tour with our own orchestra. So you've got a real variety of musical experiences. There are some ballets that tell a story, some don't. Some are really nothing but a fascinating physical exercise to watch in terms of their athleticism and their bravura kind of moves and, you know, the big Beryl turns and all of that. Other times in ballet, it's very sculptural and moving in a sensual kind of a way. Other times it's funny. You know, I mean, ballet is theater, dance, and theater music, and athleticism all rolled into one.
Are we seeing an international change or even a national change in ballet? There seems to be more athletes involved in ballet for preparation of athletic training. Why is it becoming so popular?
Well, dance has achieved a popularity in the last couple of decades particularly, and really what was the big start of it was Dancers as Superstars, the Baryshnikov Nureyev defections, and that bringing sort of the dance to the front pages. Films like The Turning Point, Fame, all of that stuff very much helped to generate an awareness. White Nights, which is one of my very fave films of the last few years. You know, those things have all generated an awareness of dance. Our society has become much more physically conscious, that it's the popularity, the popularity of ballet is part and parcel of the whole fitness genre that we live in and the physicality that we're aware of today. And that's part and parcel of it. What people have discovered about ballet is that it is a great CV. I mean, it's good cardiovascular stuff. It develops very long, lean muscle tone. Ballet does not develop bulk muscles. It develops very long, narrow muscles through a long process. It develops a great deal of flexibility and poise. So for a lot of athletes, my brother is a hockey goalie, and he's in his 20s now. He's in his mid-20s now, but when he was 17, his coach sent him to ballet class. Because particularly as a goalie, as he was starting to get a little older, that flexibility was very, very important for him. So he went to ballet class and got more flexible.
Is there still a negative stereotype with men in ballet?
Yes, it's only really true in North America. And our company press dances all over the world, and male dancers are so highly respected in other places. But here, that stigma, without question, still does exist. Less so than before. Not everyone assumes that male dancers are poofters now, but it's still very much a stigma. I think, again, though, that the Baryshnikovs and the Nureyevs, with their great power and athleticism and that sort of Russian style, generated a great awareness among people that dancers were athletes and helped to break down a lot of those stereotypes. But a lot of the guys still feel it. I mean, you know, and especially if you get into some smaller communities and stuff like that. There are some people that will always be convinced that ballet is an F-ed art form. You know, it's just not jock stuff here. But a lot of our audience today is not. There's a time, I suppose, our audience was probably 70% women or 80% women. Our audience now is probably 55% women. You know, there's more men coming to see the dance. There's certainly more men in our school than ever before on all levels, in the, just the adult amateur classes as well as in the professional classes. So it's gained a lot more respectability than it's had.
Now, to the average person that goes and participates in watching, should they be looking for something, or should they be trying to hear something, or should they try to experience something?
Well, maybe all of the above and none of the above, and I think that's everybody's own personal choice. There are some artists that you will see that they will move you, and you may not be able to make it make sense, and it just is here. You know, where their performance is so moving, and you never really do exactly figure out how it is that they entranced you. But I don't think anybody should ever feel guilty if there's 6 dancers on the stage and they end up watching sort of one of them. That's part of what dance is too. Every dancer has their own movements to do, primarily because the choreographer expects that sometimes you're going to watch all of them, but sometimes you're going to watch one. You know, lots of times dance doesn't have a story, so it really does provide an opportunity for your mind to go off into all sorts of places, just like it does with music. That's the difficult thing about non-verbal art forms, is we're a very verbal society. I mean, from the time we're that big, you know, we're taught to communicate with words. And dance, like music, is an art form that has to communicate without words. And it's hard often to find the words to describe the experience or to create the comfort zone for somebody who's coming to it for the first time. To say, it's okay if it doesn't have words. You can feel what you want to feel.
Lyndre Kearns, Communication Director for the Royal Winnipeg Ballet. They'll be performing tomorrow night at the Chester Fritz with an 8:15 start, and there are still plenty of tickets available, so if you're interested, I'd encourage you to go. On January 17th of 1985, Governor George Sinner appointed to the North Dakota Supreme Court the first woman ever afforded that honor and privilege. Justice Beryl Levine will join us next on Studio One.
A college man. I got me a college man.
But Mom, we can't afford college.
Nonsense. You worked hard to get accepted, so I'll get you on that bus somehow.
The United Negro College Fund has helped thousands of students, but the fact is, the job's not done. There are thousands we can't reach, not without the funds. So support the United Negro College Fund.
All this week on New Grooves, Hip Sway. Husker Du. And the Mission UK.
On New Grooves with Meg Griffin, all this week on NCTV.
It's 21 minutes past the hour. This week has been the 7th annual Women's History Week, using the theme Bread and Roses, Making the Law. The week-long program includes lectures and panel discussions during the noon and evening hours, all of which are, by the way, free and open to the public. What better example of the progressive impact women are making in professional society than Justice Beryl Levine, North Dakota's first woman appointed to the state Supreme Court. That's quite a title.
I love it.
Tell me, what fascinates you more, being a Supreme Court state justice or being the first woman?
That's a difficult question. It's a good question. I've always said that I think the fact that I'm the first woman is the most significant fact about my appointment. So I would have to say the latter.
Justice Levine, you were 35 and you decided to go back to law school.
That was very young.
That was very young. The prime, we would say, the prime of your life.
Oh, no. Just a kid.
Just a kid. What was the motivation for that decision?
Well, I think the primary motivation was the realization that my children were growing older, getting into their own activities and lives, and that I would no longer be able to count on mothering for the next 35 years. I had to come up with a substitute plan, because when I went to school as a youngster, I was under the impression, as were my friends, that one went to school, graduated, got married, had children, and lived happily ever after. And that was the career I had staked out for myself. But somehow, no one told me that the kids grow up and mothers often are forced to look elsewhere for fulfillment and satisfaction.
And what was your family's response?
Well, this was not a sudden decision. This was something that my husband and I had been mulling over for really many years, wondering what I was going to do. We had 5 children, and we figured we had to call an end to that at some point. And so my husband and I discussed the possibilities. We had both always been interested in politics. That was the closest I had ever come to the law. And so by really the process of elimination, we chose jointly the law for me.
Now, after that, you had graduated in '74 with honors.
Yes.
And you had become a part of a law firm for about 10 years.
That's correct.
And then came the appointment, but you had to apply, is that right?
That's right. What happened was one justice on the court resigned, and unfortunately a second one died, which created 2 vacancies on the court, and there is an application process. And again, I discussed it with family and friends and law partners and decided that I would like to go for it. And received, again, the encouragement that I had received originally about going to law school. And so I did. And there was a screening process, a committee of 6 people who interviewed all of the applicants. And then from the 24 or so applicants, they chose, I think it was 8 finalists, and forwarded those 8 names to the governor. And luckily, I was one of the 8 names, and the rest is history.
I'm gonna ask you a question. While we're doing that, I hear from our director that your beads are banging against your microphone. If you could just adjust your microphone just a little bit, or your beads just a little bit.
There you go.
That's
is
fine.
that?
That's fine.
All right.
Justice, tell me, what is it like? I would want to know. What's it like living in a household with a justice? Do you sentence your kids to dishes? Is it different in a house? What's it like growing up?
I don't sentence anyone to anything. The trial courts do that. So you see, and with regard to our kids, they're all the way now. Our youngest is a sophomore in college. But our youngest one, David, was 3 years old when I started law school, and I must tell you that when he gets annoyed with me or impatient with me, he does tell me that neglect is as bad as abuse. So, not too much reverence.
Now, you cannot remove yourself from the fact that that you're a woman. I know that the Supreme Court justices have to be biased, but just as unbiased, I'm sorry, just as much as a male justice would have to approach it from an unbiased opinion, so would a woman justice. But from the same side of the fence, how do you deal with that? Does a woman look at the situation differently than the male would?
That question is asked frequently, and about the best answer I can give you is that judges try. We try really very hard to be open-minded and to be unbiased and unprejudiced. But we're all human, and we all bring to the bench our experience and our attitudes, which have been shaped over many years and are probably deep down in our subconscious. So I would say there probably is, in some areas that I cannot really articulate, a different way of looking at things, and that's why it's so important to have men and women, young and old, different colors if they exist in your society, to represent these attitudes and experiences.
We appreciate your time, Justice Beryl Levine.
Thank
what a pleasure
you.
to have you. North Dakota State Supreme Court Justice Beryl Levine. Justice Levine will be speaking tomorrow afternoon at 3:30 for the special Helen Hamilton Day event hosted by the Law Women's Caucus. We'll be back with more Studio One right after this.
All this week on the Adult Cartoon Show, it's the classics. You'll see jokes with punch, dogs that smell, shrubs that move, food that talks back. And what's he digging for? Porky thinks he's dead meat, and Bugs is in drag again. There's plenty of cute chicks, childish behavior, real fine yachting, hot romance. Oops, nice buns. It's sad, it's angry, it's ugly, it's pretty. On the Adult Cartoon Show, all this week on NCTV.
Now, in some ways, it's a brand new season for Sioux hockey. This weekend, as they begin the first round of the WCHA playoffs, the Sioux will play host to Minnesota Duluth for a 2-game total goal series. Face-off will be at 1 p.m. on Saturday, 2 p.m. on Sunday, and there are still tickets available at this time for both games. Now let's get one last look at the weather with meteorologist Pam Coonan. Pam?
Thanks, Tom. Well, as I mentioned earlier, the temperature has been falling during the day, and this evening the Grand Forks area can expect a low of 16 degrees, and by morning we will have had 1 to 2 inches of snow. The weak low, which is affecting our area today, will continue to weaken and move northeastward and will not be as strong tomorrow. Another disturbance, which is being produced by the system in Southern California, will move through our region tomorrow and will bring some light snow to the central Dakotas. Tomorrow in Grand Forks, we can expect a high near 20 and will remain cloudy, and some light snow is expected. Again, some travelers' advisories are out for the area, so watch it on the roads. Tom?
Thanks, Pam. We want to thank our guest, Supreme Court Justice Beryl Levine, as well as Doug Fosse. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.